Hello everyone. Welcome back to Global Unification Bootcamp. Continued from Dr. Wilson's great lecture on conflict analysis and resolution perspective, I will lead session 2 of this bootcamp. I am Jihae Lim, Assistant Professor in Global Affairs at George Mason University, Korea. In this section, we will think about the question, what you think and know about South and North Korea. This question might sound easy to answer, but having a right answer for this question will be the first and important step to get close to unification. To get a right answer for this question, I will talk about what you have to prepare to answer this question. My goal is not to teach you what the answer should be, but to teach the way how you answer this question. During this lecture, I will raise some questions. When I do that, pause this video for a moment and think about your answer. The lecture is divided into 3 sections. In the first section, after briefly talking about learning objectives, I will focus on what you have to know when you try to answer the question I posed in the beginning. By looking at statistics about South and North Korea together, we will find out how resources you want to utilize. In the second section, I will explain how we understand North Korea. You will be able to learn some method used in North Korean studies. In the last section, we will try to apply the logic of what and how to know to the question how we can achieve peaceful inter-Korean relationship. In doing so, you will consider how to rethink your question. Through this lecture, you will understand the challenges and opportunities of using resources, know method to interpret the resources for better understanding of North Korea, and learn how to use those resources and tools to find the pathway for unification in a proper way. When someone asks you, what do you know about South and North Korea? What would you answer? Will you talk about different lifestyle of 2 countries? Language, geography, economics, or government? How exactly can you explain your topic? To explain what you know, what data would you use? In other words, how would you use resources to support your explanation? For example, many people will think and know about different political regimes of 2 Koreas. While South Korea is considered a democratic country, North Korea is viewed as authoritarianism or dictatorship. Due to this difference, people's political rights or the degree of freedom in each country is quite different. These would be what you know about 2 countries' politics and the influence of politics. However, do you know how different it is? How exactly do you know when you say you know about 2 Korea's different political regimes? How will you compare 2 countries' freedom? Wait, back to the basic. What is freedom? What you know about Korea's might be mostly coming from news media. If that is the case, there is a high possibility that you know what the media is focusing on. I'm not saying that this is bad, but saying that this will not be what you really want to know, because that is what the media or the author of that content wants to know. In this section, I hope that you can start finding out what you want to know about 2 Koreas first. Let's get back to the political regime and freedom. According to Freedom House, while North Korea is classified as not free, South Korea is a free country. That is what you might already know, right? But have you ever thought about how you can define not free or free? Freedom House actually measures the degree of freedom with numbers. As you can see in this slide, North Korea has 3 points out of 100 and South Korea has 83 points. Pretty big difference, right? Or do you think that 2 Koreas have higher or lower number than you expected? Good. Then now you might wonder where this scores is coming from. Freedom House's freedom score is measured by political rights and civil liberties. To measure political rights, electoral process, political pluralism and participation, and functioning of government are examined. Civil liberties are explained by freedom of expression and belief, associational and organizational rights, rule of law, personal autonomy, and individual rights. In each category, there are numerous sub-questions to measure a certain topic. If you are interested in this topic, you might want to visit Freedom House website later. Like Freedom House did, firstly, you will have to understand what you are exactly looking at. In this case, Freedom House wanted to know degree of freedom of countries all over the world. What kind of freedom? They wanted to know how politically free the government and people are. So they started looking at political rights and civil liberties as a means to define freedom and designing a method to measure them. By doing so, they were able to score each country's degree of freedom and show the result so that we can easily see how free the country is. In brief, when you know about South and North Korea, the first step is to know what and why you want to know about them. And then you might want to see what resources you can utilize. Let's say that now you know what you want to know. Then it is time to go deep inside the world of data. Here, there are some index showing a country's basic features provided by the United Nations. Do you think that you can fill the blank for South and North Korea? Pause this video here and try to fill the blank. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try it. Now check your answer. Did you guess right? How well do you know about South and North Korea? For sure, knowing some accurate information is important. If you've never seen this type of information, you might be filling the blanks with some bias. This is one of the reasons you have to look at resources when you want to know something. But although you guess wrong, don't be disappointed. In fact, having right numbers is not important here. The more important thing is how you interpret these numbers and what numbers you want to use to know about South and North Korea. Let's look at the table together. Despite a similar geographical size, South Korea's population is almost twice as large as North Korea's. Economy-wise, South Korea's GDP is 100 times greater than North Korea's GDP. If we consider GDP per capita, which shows annual economic output per person, while South Korean people earn $33,000 per person in a year, North Korean people earn less than $700. International trade balance showing the difference between nations' exports and imports is quite different. It is 38 billion for South Korea and minus 2 billion for North Korea, meaning that the amount of imports exceeds exports in North Korea. North Korea's unemployment rate is lower than South Korea. And while 96% of people can access internet in South Korea, the corresponding data is not even available in North Korea. I just described some general information here. Among them, which index or field are you interested in? What data will be useful to know South and North Korea? What can you learn from the table? For instance, let's say that you are still interested in freedom of people in each country. Then what data can be helpful? You might want to see individuals using the internet. The data will tell you people's freedom to access information, and that can affect freedom of expression or belief. Surface area will not be that helpful to understand freedom of a country. What if you are interested in the country's job market? Then you will look at unemployment rate. Now, will you say that North Korea's job market is better than South Korea? Here, you might want to be careful to interpret the data. North Korea has lower rate of employment rate. However, you might want to think about different political and economic systems of two Koreas as background to understand unemployment rate. Even though low unemployment rate usually indicates good economy, if we consider GDP or GDP per capita, or the difference between capitalism and communism, you might want to explain the numbers differently. Sometimes, data cannot solely give you the answer for your question. Let's see one more thing. Look at international trade balance. By the numbers, it seems that North Korea imports quite a lot. And the number itself tells us that size-wise, South Korea has approximately 16 times larger volume in trade. However, compared to GDP, isn't it too small difference? Considering North Korea's closed economy, isn't it weird? In fact, to understand the size of trade correctly, you have to look at exports and imports separately rather than balance of trade. South Korea's exports is 500 times larger than North Korea, and you see the similar fact in the volume of imports. Like this, even accurate data sometimes can tell you inaccurate things depending on what you want to know. And depending on the very fact of what you want to know, you will want to select, combine, or sometimes disaggregate data. In summary, before answering the question, what you know about South and North Korea, I encourage you to consider what to know. And in order to know what to know, answer these 3 questions. What do you want to know? What resources can or do you use? What do you learn from the resources? In the following discussion session, you will answer these 3 questions to start your own research. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to section 2 of my lecture. Now I believe that you found out what to know about South and North Korea. Some of you might face some difficulties in knowing North Korea. That can be due to lack of data because North Korea is obviously a closed society. For South Korea, it would be relatively easy to get some information on internet or books. You can pick a phone and call your Korean friends to ask your question. Or you can visit somewhere you want to find the answer. This is not applicable to North Korea. Therefore, in this section, I will talk about how you should know about North Korea. Unlike other studies, scholars in North Korean studies face many difficulties in conducting field study or obtaining primary resources. And they always have to doubt reliability of official resources from North Korean governments. Still, they have developed numerous ways to study North Korea. In earlier days, North Korea was viewed as an enemy to South Korea even in academia. Ideologically, North Korea has a different system, so was used as a tool for government's propaganda. In other words, studies of North Korea were used for political reasons. In turn, scholars often used ideological or political lens to study North Korea. In addition, available data was limited. North Korean government ceased publishing official data, especially economic and social data, by 1960s. Moreover, almost all available data was not really reliable. Due to this difficulty, ideographic approach, which focuses on the individual event, was prevalent. Rather than understanding the event or policy in the context of the whole system, uniqueness of the individual case was emphasized. As a result, static view rather than dynamic view considering interaction between and among actors and environments was the problem in understanding North Korea. With this method, we could only see the small part of North Korea. In the late 1970s, the US National Archives opened up some North Korean documents and enabled scholars to delve into North Korea. From there, scholars started going deep inside North Korea. The trend in North Korean studies was shifted at that moment. In addition to broader range of resources, criticism on previous method arose. As I said, since there was no comprehensive understanding of North Korean society, when a certain policy or event was explained, scholars back in earlier days tended to apply their existing knowledge based on ideology. Scholars in the 1980s and 1990s started arguing we should understand North Korea as it was. This is called immanent critical approach. According to this approach, we have to analyze North Korea based on North Korea's ideology and perspective. This method started from the recognition that North Korea has a different system and its own way to rule. Therefore, when we explain North Korea's behavior, the behavior should be analyzed based on North Korea's logic. This method later contributed to apolitical perspectives on North Korea. Recently, North Korean studies has been rapidly developed with various disciplines and resources. Now scholars use not only various resources, but also method and discipline. Political science, economics, sociology, anthropology, medical studies, and all kinds of discipline you can name can be applied to explain North Korea. Depending on what you want to know, resources and disciplines can be selected. See, this is why you have to know what you want to know first. Let's see this current research trend in detail. As you can see in the number of North Korean defectors entering into South Korea, the volume of this number had been sharply growing during the 1990s and the 2000s. In fact, until the 1990s, the total number of North Korean defectors was less than 1,000. However, after North Korea's famine in the 1990s, more and more North Korean people came to South Korea. And in scholarship, it has been popular to interview them to understand North Korea. What kind of knowledge do you think that you can get from North Korean defectors? Pause this video here for a second and think about your answer. Let me give you more information. Here are some reasons for defecting from North Korea. Most people came to South Korea due to economic difficulties. There are some people searching for freedom, earning money, and following or reuniting family. Through this reason, scholars found out that North Korea was suffering from severe economic downturn at that moment. Food shortage was worse than we knew, and we could say so by looking at the reason why people ran out of North Korea. In addition, North Korean defectors became a window to see and analyze North Korean society. Through their experience in North Korea, we could conjecture internal affairs of North Korea. However, there are some potential problems when you use this resource because defectors have a limited amount of knowledge of a particular topic. We also cannot really know if their testimonies are true. Therefore, recent studies try to develop some method to utilize this type of data or apply other disciplines to use these resources. By doing so, scholars attempt to have better understanding of North Korea through North Korean defectors. Here is an example. A few years ago, the World Conference on North Korean Studies was held in South Korea. 150 scholars from 17 countries joined in the conference and discussed not only political or economic issues such as ideology, politics, economy, diplomacy, inter-Korean relationship, and nuclear issues, but also the humanity, arts, literature, and micro-level research such as urbanization, movies, music, and citizens' awareness. In the conference, experts from different fields of studies actively communicated and exchanged ideas across various disciplines. In fact, recent North Korean studies produced numerous multi- or interdisciplinary research. It includes research combining a study of ecosystems of lifestyle of particular North Korean cities, examining females' role in marketization process, or exploring external trade networks and information distribution. The platform to obtain resources is also being expanded. Here are two websites you can get some statistical data. Both websites are operated by the South Korean government. The first one deals with general information of North Korea published by Ministry of Unification. In these websites, you can find North Korea's law, North Korea's government's organizational chart, some important figures, and current events. The second one provides statistical data published by Statistics Korea. This website has very detailed and much more indicators than you expected. For example, you can find how many cars North Korea has from this website. One more good thing about this website is that you can easily compare statistics between South and North Korea's in this website. Not only North Korea's statistics, but also South Korea's corresponding statistics are provided in the website. Unfortunately, they are only available in Korean now. If you can read Korean, they will provide comprehensive and accurate resources to know North Korea. If you can only speak English, numerous international organizations such as the United Nations and its sibling organizations, Freedom House that I mentioned in the first section of this lecture, the Heritage Foundation, or US government including CIA will be the good place to start your research. Through this section, I talked about how to know North Korea. This will be related to methodological questions. In the discussion section, let's visit one of these websites that I provided and see if we can get some data that you want to know. Take a break for a second and let's see again in. I hope that you enjoyed restful short break. Now we are in the last section of this lecture. We will apply what we've learned to discussion on unification now. And we will see why understanding what to know and how to know are important. We all want peaceful relationship between South and North Korea, and we want to know how we can achieve this goal. So let's start from there. Before discussing unification, let me remind what we've learned in the previous sections. In the first section, I emphasized what to know. You have to be questioning what you should know about your topic. In doing so, you can ask yourself, 1. What do you want to know? 2. What resources do you use? And 3. What can you learn from the resources? In order to answer these questions, you will have to think about method, how to know. Especially for North Korea, we studied how you can view North Korea and where you can find reliable resources. With all of this, now we want to know a pathway to unification. But think about this first. What do you mean by pathway and unification? It might be a bit hard to answer this question. Even though you know the definition of these two concepts correctly, when you have to explain them, it's not really easy. Especially when you have to connect to this question to the specific way, it is even harder. In research, this process is called operationalization. Operationalization means turning abstract concepts into measurable observations. We can do this process here. What can be the pathway of unification? Through what you can achieve unification? Policy will be one of them. Negotiation, cultural exchange, or communication can also be. Then, what is the unification? In what condition can you say we are united? One government in a country? Or when you can freely move between two countries? There can be different level of unification, but I will use the concept of economic integration here. Remember, this is one of examples. You can use your own operationalization. We will do this in the discussion session after this lecture. Now I got two operationalized concepts. Policy from pathway, economic integration from unification. The next step is to connect these two concepts. For instance, I might want to ask, does South Korea's policy have an impact on the economic integration between two Koreas? In fact, this question is raised by Stephen Hagar and Marcus Noland. In their article titled The Microeconomics of North-South Korea Cross-Border Integration, the authors examined how South Korean public policy influences the level and composition of cross-border integration. They conducted a survey with 200 South Korean firms doing business in North Korea and 50 firms which never entered North Korea and analyzed the result. Although this study is already completed, let's assume that we are starting this study here. To start the study, let's apply our what to know and how to know analysis. First of all, we might want to know what to know. What do you want to know here? We might want to know impact of South Korea's policy on economic integration of two Koreas. What resources can we use? Survey of 250 South Korean firms involved in trade or investment with North Korea. And the last question, what you can learn from the resources, will be the concluding part of this research. Second, how should we know? We will use survey data and employ statistical method based on the survey result. Now we are ready to answer the question, what we learn from resources. As research outcome, quote, drawing on a formal survey of 250 South Korean firms in the context of North Korea's weak institutional environment, we found that South Korean public policy has a substantial impact on the level and composition of cross-border integration, affecting entry, the modality of operation, and their sustainability. State support is a significant factor in entry. Among other determinants, firms receiving government support are more likely to enter. In brief, the research outcome shows South Korea's policy can be one of ways to achieve peaceful relationship between two Koreas. This would be the answer for the question, what you can learn from resources. And you can now talk about what you know about unification. You know that when we define unification as economic integration, public policy of South Korea has significantly affected the level of unification based on survey of 250 South Korean firms having trade with North Korea. Let me ask the question again. What would you answer the following question? What do you think and know about South and North Korea and unification? Some of you might want to take a time to answer the question, and maybe others now feel more confused about what you know. Then you are on the right track. In fact, it is not easy to say that you know about South and North Korea. If that is unification, that is even more difficult. I hope this bootcamp will be a stepping stone to think this question seriously and know at least a bit about how you answer this question. To do so, here are 3 takeaways of my whole lecture. First, use appropriate resources. Second, learn tools to interpret the resources and select the best tool among them. Third, apply the resource and tool to answer your question. In the discussion session, you will define pathway to unification on your own way. And then, you will have your own research question and design the way to answer this question. In the next lecture, Dr. Hae-young Kang will talk about regional and global implications of Korean unification. I hope that you can enhance your ideas to the global level from this lecture. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you for listening to my lecture and see you again.